with special reference to the women of Indian occupied Kashmir with the title Kashmiri Women Crying for Justice, in parallel with 46th session of United Nations Human Rights Council. This webinar is organized by Kashmir Institute of International Relations in collaboration with World Muslim Congress, WMC. And thank you very much, dear excellencies, distinguished panelists, and dear ladies and gentlemen for joining us today. I'm really thankful. Today we have a really wonderful panel on this very special day that is called International Women's Day. Women all around the world where they are celebrating this International Women's Day. Besides that, there are women who are living in the conflict zones. They are suffering very deeply and very grossly through sexual violence, through, by rape, by molestation, by killing. They are victims of direct and indirect violence in conflict zone, and with special reference to the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This day is dedicated to the women of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. We are lucky enough that we have today wonderful speakers with us. They are subject matter experts in their fields, and particularly for the rights of women all around the globe. They are very, very prominent. They are very strong voices of the rights of women. I'm honored to introduce you my chief guest of this webinar, Ms. Julie Ward, who is a British politician, and she is the former member of European Parliament, and she served as the member of European Parliament from 2014 to 2020, and she's a strong voice of the rights of the women all around the world. Wherever the women and girls are suffering, they call for Ms. Julie Ward for raising their voice to the international fora. So very quickly, I really want to invite her. I'm pleased to invite her on this webinar as a chief guest, and she will deliver her keynote speech for this webinar on Kashmiri women crying for justice. So very quickly, I want to give floor to Ma'am Julie Ward, because everybody really wants to hear. Ma'am, you have the floor, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Shagufta. It's always a pleasure, actually, to work closely with you, and we had many opportunities to be together in Geneva, not just online, and I can't wait really for those days again when we can be together in the same space. You are also a strong woman and a strong voice, and not just for Kashmiri women, and I want to say that because we've got to stand up for all women everywhere. That's important. There's a sisterhood that requires solidarity here. And I've been thinking about International Women's Day and how it's really a day for women to celebrate their achievements, often against the odds in a man's world. And women of Kashmir don't even get off the starting blocks because the situation is so serious and the violations are so horrendous that women cannot even think about, the glass ceiling, because just getting by on a day-to-day basis under occupation and with the levels of violence that are prevalent means that it is a situation of survival, really, rather than one of aspiration. And I think that's really important because, every social media account I'm looking at is tweeting today about International Women's Day. But the hashtag that they're choosing to use is also choose to challenge. And I think this is very helpful for us in our campaign to draw attention to the violations and the injustices, that all of us have to keep being a strong voice to challenge the outrage and injustice. And that's because we could easily, in our celebration of achievements of women, we could easily forget about the women who have been left behind. We could forget about all the half widows, for example, or all the victims of rape, you know, the lost children. We could forget about them in our efforts to celebrate achievement. But every child that is born, every girl that is born, you know, every woman that is alive deserves to have the same opportunities that I have, that many of us have around the world. And we know that that just isn't the case because of the occupation. And so I would urge you to use the hashtag #ChooseToChallenge throughout this important day to raise awareness of the women and the girls who are prevented from having the same opportunities that many of my sisters have in the UK, in the USA, in the developed world. I'm not going to talk a lot about the violations. I think I already seen that you had a fantastic panel here. People who are real experts in their subject, and like me, will always be on hand, on call to stand with you and to speak about this. I think that we have to also look into our own culture sometimes as well to see where there is inequality. Yeah, we have to do that also because many patriarchal societies still don't allow women and girls to succeed in the way that they should, don't give them the opportunities that they should have. And I do know from my visit to Azad Kashmir, where I was at a conference in the university, that the people who made the most impression on me that day were the young women, were the girls. They are bright, they are motivated, you know, they have so much to offer. They are the best, really, and yet they will not be able to really fulfill those aspirations, I think, you know. So so my message is, let's keep challenging everybody, you know, whether it's in our own families, our own cultures, our own governments. And sometimes we have to also challenge other women because not all the women in the world are on the same page as we are. They will look the other way when there is violation. They will look the other way when there is inequality and discrimination. And until we have everybody on the same page, willing to expose all the discrimination and violations, I think that it's going to be difficult. So we have a big job to do to keep educating people about this. And it's no good people saying, oh, Kashmir, it's too complicated. I don't understand. I don't want to get involved, which is the same as people say about Palestine. They say, oh, it's too complicated. I don't want to get involved. There's a job to be done to educate people. There are basic rights that have been violated, and we still, maybe just the last thing to say is that this last year, because of COVID, has allowed those violations to go unchecked because the world has been distracted by COVID, and it's been a cover for many governments, including the Modi government, to do what the hell they like. And we have to say no more, no more. We will expose the discrimination and the inequality. So thank you very much. I'm sure you're going to have a really fantastic webinar here today. I wish I could stay. I'm currently working with refugees here in the UK, so this is why I have to go. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us. We have really few questions on different resolutions passed by Security Council, but definitely I will share those questions to you. I'll put those questions, and later on you can answer so that we can communicate to the concern. Thank you very much once again, and definitely we have to challenge against all odds. Thank you very much for joining us. Good evening. Bye. Okay, my next speaker is Fatima Ayad Al-Rashidi. She is the founder and president, Humanists Without Borders. She has also a little time and she wants to leave earlier. So very quickly, I really want to give you the floor, ma'am, for your intervention. And later on, I will introduce the concept of...
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Shakufa. My name is Fatima Ayed. In fact, Fatima Ayed. I would love to apologize myself from all of you. Please allow me to apologize for all of them with a sincere apology that I had something to do and still unfinished. But let me give my point in rush. And I really hope that you forgive me for this. As in this day of Women's Day, I would love to salute all the ladies in the floor, and sorry for being late. And I really hope peace would spread, health and wealth for all. To join this, yeah.
Fatima, excuse me, we cannot hear you properly. Are you in some sort
Because
of noisy?
that's why, yes, that's why, my dear, I'm telling you, I'm so much in doing my best to get this done. Okay, can you hear me right now?
Now it's a little
Hello?
bit better than before. Yeah. Please carry on.
Inshallah. Yeah, wallah, sorry, but I'm not in Kuwait right now. That's why. My dear, first of all, sorry for being late. Okay, and I really apologize for all day ladies in the panel and in the floor. And my best salute, my best wishes for all ladies around the globe in this day. There is so much to do from my perspective, I guess, for ladies and humanitarian act and to advocate for their own rights. The thing is about Kashmir, I always connect Kashmir to the conflict around the world. Say Palestine, or call it give it any name, Palestine, Iraq and Kuwait, anywhere where there is a geographical constraint, like between India and Pakistan, there is always a conflict that cannot be resolved, from my perspective at least, cannot be resolved unless there is a political will. We had said this alongside with the other meeting, but I think it's time for not only women, but for children, women, all public, okay, to have a public movement against this. And this should move the government in a governmental level to look at the problem and what they're suffering, because unfortunately in this world only media can talk, okay, and maybe half media in your place can say the truth. As for the UN matter, okay, from a human rights perspective, every time we want to to practice our UN resolution or United Nations Security Council, like we have 1960 and 2122. You know, all of these terms that came up to save the women in a conflict area and during the war. But the thing is, I'm saying, how can we do it if there is no peace, peaceful area that we can negotiate their own rights? So the main thing, in a nutshell, we should start from the root itself. The political problem should be solved first by any political initiative. This had not happened neither from the international fora So my advice and my solidarity would say we should push the public via you, via conferences, via the hashtag, as the ladies before said, and via educating the people that this is their right, they should fight for it. We are fighting, but we are far away. I don't think we can do anything. But if a public in this time of century, everything had been changed in political fora via people, if you know what I mean, publicly. If we want to say no in our government, we would just go and strike peacefully. يعني I think this is not يعني need to be repeated again and again. All of you should know. And my يعني heartfelt emotion toward you guys in this day, and in particular in Kashmir with so much like violence going on. May Allah hafiz and may Allah protect all of them. I'm not saying only Pakistan Zindabad, but humanity Zindabad. Okay, if you allow me, because I really need to finish something and I'm outside of Kuwait.
Thank you, Fatima, for joining us. We can understand your other commitments as well. But even then, thank you very much for joining us and showing solidarity with the oppressed women of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. You're right, public has the power and they can communicate and they can push even governments to, move in the right direction. Thank you very much for joining us.
I'm with you all the way. If you need anything, and if you can let me know where we can go forward in this. If you can create a public like connection between all of us. And I'm pretty sorry again, because honestly speaking, it's not only that I have something to do here, but something had been done before this meeting. I will let you know later on. So please forgive me, okay?
No problem. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu.
My next speaker is a very, very strong voice of women all around the globe. She's a true advocate. I must say, she advocates the issue and suffering and plights of the half widows and widows of Indian occupied Kashmir, not only at the United Nations Human Rights Council, but also at the Status and Commission of Women, CSW in New York, and all other fora. She speaks very, very loud and very high for women of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. I have with me a barrister, Ma'am Margaret Owen. She's from UK, and she's human rights barrister specializing in women's rights. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us, and I'm very pleased to have you today. And the floor is yours. You can talk to the audience.
Well, hello, all of you, absolutely wonderful women on this International Women's Day. Everybody is talking about celebrating International Women's Day, but lots of us hardly see this as a great day to celebrate. Rather, it's a great day to acknowledge and recognize all the millions of women and girls who are being increasingly left behind. I echo everything that wonderful Julie Ward had said, so I don't really want to repeat everything she said. But let's say that what we can celebrate today, and maybe that's the only good thing that has come out of the pandemic and the lockdowns, is that we can all be together on many, many Zooms. We don't have to try and get a visa to Trump's United States and be refused, get on a plane, spend a bomb on a hotel to try and get to the UN, because we are all talking to each other in a way we've never talked before, all over the world. Let us celebrate the great solidarity and the strength of women everywhere. And also let's celebrate those serious men, as Mary Robinson said, in every country, there are serious men who understand that you cannot have a free, just and democratic society unless you have gender equality and women's empowerment at the center of it. That's one thing. But why I'm so honored, humbled, and grateful to be talking to you all today is that Kashmir, beautiful, wonderful Kashmir, wonderful, brave Kashmiri women and men, you are the most militarized zone anywhere in the world. There are more Indian soldiers per capita than anywhere else in the world. You have been the victims of the most appalling human rights violations, and the world and the UN seems to be silent. What India did, was it last August, when it broke its own constitution and went in and broke its international obligations for the autonomy of Kashmir, is an outrage. And unfortunately, the UN, it seems to be in paralysis. And what is more, I'm talking to you now from London in the UK. I'm even appalled. Forget the Tory government, which is because of Brexit will sell arms to India or any other country, authoritarian regimes which are racist and misogynist. But even I'm afraid the Labour Party refused to really condemn India and said it was a domestic matter between India and Pakistan. That's not good enough. Absolutely appalling war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide is going on in Kashmir. And let's not forget, under Modi's authoritarian rule, Muslims in India are also victims of the most appalling persecutions, murders, taking away their citizenship. But Kashmir, unbelievable what is going on, and how, I'm afraid, in so many conflicts across the world, women are being targeted, men are being disappeared, killed, tortured, or taken away to prison, and women are being raped, gang raped in remote rural villages. They don't even know, and many of them are what we call half widows, women whose men folk, husbands, sons, fathers, women, suddenly their men disappeared. They were out working in the fields. They were taken from inside their houses. They were walking along a street and they disappeared. And these women cannot even find out what happened to them. And what is extraordinary, I speak now as a lawyer, that India is one of the few countries that actually signed up and ratified the International Convention, which actually protects the rights of the people who are victims of forced disappearances. And under that convention, every country that signs it has to keep an open list of all the people it has in prison. So that at least the people whose loved ones have disappeared can go and find out, are there men in prison or are they in some mass grave somewhere? I talk to you not just as an international lawyer working on women's rights, but because I also am the founder, president, once director of the international organization, Widows for Peace Through Democracy. And we are having our own event at the upcoming Commission on the Status of Women. Go into our website, www.widowsforpeace.org, and you can come onto our event on March the 17th, when we do have somebody speaking about what is happening in Kashmir, Shasti. So this is an opportunity at the CSW to speak about the women of Kashmir. But the trouble is that even with our partners, some of our partners are saying, well, you can't talk about Kashmir because it's not a country, it's part of India. So we even have this problem with our own partners in India because they say you can't talk about Kashmir on its own. The Indian government, I think it was last year, and I only heard about that when I was honored to be part of a beautiful, moving, memorable film called War Cries in Paradise. And there I heard that the Indian government had passed legislation, I think at the end of last year, called the Armed Forces Empowerment Act, which said that no soldier in no Indian soldier will ever be made accountable for any acts that he did when he's in uniform. And there's also an undercurrent in which Indian soldiers are almost encouraged to demoralize the population by targeting women for rape, gang rape, and sexual torture. The terrible thing is, on top of all of this, we have all these widows, but this is not just in the last years. This has been going on for 30 years. All this time, there are more and more women who are widowed, trying to survive poverty and terrible hardships and vulnerability to violence, trying to educate their children, trying to keep their girls in school. We know how important it is. If we want the empowerment of women, we want girls to be able to stay at school. And the terrible thing is that if widows who have absolutely nothing, no support, no resources, if they have to choose who they will take out of school, who do they choose? Who do they choose? They choose the girl child. So whatever is happening all over the world where there are conflicts, what happens? Rape is now a weapon of war. And in conflicts, you kill the men and boys, and you rape the women and girls, take them into sexual slavery, destroy them, absolutely destroy even the moral. It's a way of actually a genocide which actually demoralizes the population that you are trying to oppress. And therefore, there's an increase. I don't know about Kashmir, but in many of the countries I work in, there's now, particularly because of COVID and lockdowns, there is more and more girls coming out of school into child marriage. And that is a terrible thing because they're often married to much older men and they become child widows. What can we do? What can we do? Well, every month, the Security Council, I think you have to be members of, have ECOSOC status, but all of you can come under our wing, Widows for Peace Through Democracy, and you can register under us if you don't have ECOSOC status, because every month, the Security Council has a meeting. No, the president changes every month. It was a UK last month, this month it's America, so on. And every month in the Women, Peace and Security framework, we ask the Security Council, why are they not prioritizing widowhood issues in the Women, Peace and Security? Because if you'll never have any beginnings of any sort of peace dialogue unless you ensure that widows' voices are heard. And so we're asking for that, and that's something that you can do as well. You can join that meeting. The terrible thing is we're talking about the paralysis now of the UN. Again and again over Kashmir, the UN is asking again and again for Pakistan and India to come together and sit at the table in the dialogue. But they don't even mention the women. It's the women the women in every country. I'm sure that there are women in India whose husbands are in the army, who also are terribly, there must be women in India who also need to come together with you. There must be widows of the military in India who surely, it seems to me that women in their solidarity, whatever faction you're in, wherever you are, women want peace. I think the problem is, why is no one condemning India? Why is my own government silent? Unfortunately, in the UK, we've got the added problem, and you know what I'm going to tell you about, it's Brexit. Brexit. And therefore, that has made the UK extremely desperate now to sell arms and to make trade deals. And India is where they want to trade. So they are absolutely silent about India. They do not want to antagonize the Modi government. And the Modi government is a fascist government. It's a misogynist government and it's a racist government. And so in my own country, we keep speaking about this with our own government and with our Labour government to come out and condemn India for all the terrible things that it is doing in Kashmir. I mean, I'm extremely grateful to Julie Ward and to Shamin Shaul and to you as well, Professor, for inviting me here, because I think that it's in Kashmir that that word half widows was first coined. And I have picked it up and I speak now all the time, not just about the widows, but about the half widows who are wives of the forcibly disappeared. And also we know that in Kashmir, many, many people, particularly lawyers and politicians, musicians, the intellectuals, the brains of Kashmir, so many of these men have been taken away, far away to prison in India. But a lot of these women don't even know whether their menfolk are in prison or are they dead. WPD, Widows for Peace to Democracy, is launching on March the 17th at the Commission on the Status of Women and for CEDAW, that's the Committee of the UN Convention on all forms of discrimination against women, its dossier on discrimination. And we have got, that's a completely open dossier. So all of you, remember, go into our website and give us continually actual cases and names of cases where you can say this is a form of discrimination which is in breach of the CEDAW. And India has signed up to the CEDAW. So there you've got it. And it's really important because actually even refusing information to the half widows is itself a form of discrimination, the denial of information. Everybody has a right to information. So I want to see in Kashmir, I don't know if it exists, forgive my ignorance, but widows need to have their own voice. Widows must never be seen solely as exclusively as victims of violence and marginalization. You've got to, we need to support and recognize their key social and economic roles they have as unsupported mothers looking after people. So please, please send us when you have a really good case, names, dates, everything. Open up that dossier. But I want to see in Kashmir an association of Kashmiri widows and half widows that could then become our partners. And wherever we can, we will try and give you a voice at the international. So we won't despair. We celebrate the solidarity of women, but we also are very conscious that we've got to fight even harder and together so that there's no pushback on the progress that is made on paper. We need the actual enforcement and implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action. and the UN Convention on Elimination of Discrimination, and also all the UN 1325 Security Council resolutions about eliminating sexual violence in conflict. Thank you. I probably haven't been as eloquent as Julie Ward has been, but it's wonderful to see you all, and congratulations. And I have to tell you that years ago, I'm very old now, on my honeymoon, I did come to Kashmir in Srinagar. Was absolutely beautiful. And I long to come to your beautiful country again and to meet you all in peace. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It's wonderful to hear that you did your honeymoon in Kashmir. It's really paradise on earth, but under the occupation, it has turned into a real hell with 1 million troops, and military and paramilitary troops are deployed there. And now it's the highest military zone in the world, and it's called the open prison. And it's really unfortunate. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your comprehensive, very, very moving intervention as always. And it's really great to have you. My next speaker is Ms. Catherine Constantinides. She is a true, I must say, sister, friend, and a real sisterhood. You can say that she comes in. She traveled right from the South Africa to Azad Kashmir for a conference, and for looking and meeting up with the communities, how the people in Azad Kashmir are living, and how the women in Indian occupied Kashmir, and of course all other population is living. So she made a great comparison over here, and she will definitely share her real testimony of and experience right from traveling from South Africa to Azad Kashmir. I'm pleased to invite her for her intervention, and she will share her experience while working with the women of Kashmir. Catherine, you have the floor, please. Catherine, are you there? Unmute, please unmute. Yeah.
There we go. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me, and to all of the women on the panel. It's really an honor to be speaking with you this afternoon. To Professor Shagufta Ashraf, firstly, let me commend you and honor you on this International Women's Day. Thank you for always being at the forefront of creating these forums for women around the world, such as myself, Ms. Margaret Owen, who spoke before me, and the prestigious panel that you have this afternoon, both before and after me. It really is an honor to be able to engage with you on this important occasion of International Women's Day. My message is one of pure solidarity with the Kashmiri women who fight for justice on a daily basis. It is really important on a day such as this for us to remember that no matter where in the world we are, myself specifically, I am now in South Africa, so far removed from the Kashmiri issue. I live in a part of the world where we have so many challenges, social justice challenges, inequality challenges. And unfortunately, the truth is that the issue of Kashmir and the occupation by India is one that doesn't even see the light of day. The media do not even go anywhere near this specific cause. It's just not something that we speak of. Ms. Owen said a bit earlier, why does nobody condemn India? And this is a question that we need to constantly ask ourselves. And even though we can only do as much as we can in our different corners of the world to ensure that not only are we holding India accountable in our small ways through our activism, through our platforms, through our voices, we must continue to do so outside of even these important days on the calendar in the year. There's this day, there are several important days, and we highlight the injustice of Kashmir, and we focus in on specifically women, be it the August date where we put focus and emphasis on that. We have to do that every single day of the year. It is very, very difficult for some of us because of the media blockade on this issue, but we have to constantly, as I said, ask ourselves, what is it that we do to stand up and ensure that we are putting forward the truth and just information into the circles and spaces that we have access to? As somebody who, as an activist, has found how to really harness the power of social media and to use it to my advantage in the work that I do, on my trip just a little over a year ago, before the world went into lockdown, I was very privileged to travel to Kotli in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. And to be in Kashmir alongside Professor Ashraf was something truly very special. Not only because I got to meet Kashmiri women who have really suffered, Kashmiri women who all have so many important stories to tell, but I could understand firsthand how it is that Kashmiri people are living in Pakistani-administered Kashmir. And through that experience and my time on the ground, I was able to come back home and to truly tell the story of what I saw for myself. I didn't share a story of what I was told or what I read about or what I perhaps saw online on a YouTube video, etc. I could share the truth and the stories that I was told and shared by people who have truly suffered, people who have no access to their family members, be it mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, and children. These half widows that Miss Margaret Owen also spoke of are stories absolutely so painful and horrific that we can't hold on to them. We unfortunately have to share them with the world, because people need to start to understand that the role of us as activists is to break the silence and is to ensure that eventually we put enough pressure on our governments and our leaders that they do condemn India's behavior. And the injustice that is taking place in the occupied territory of Kashmir must be one that in our lifetime sees a solution come to the fore. How is it that in the year 2021, we are still on International Women's Day having to have such horrific discussions? How is it that we are living in a day and age where fellow sisters, mothers, aunts, wives are living under such oppressive measures? It is really important that we share the stories. And I'm so forever grateful that I had that privilege and opportunity to meet with families on the mountainside that had been there for 70 or 80 years. More of them had been there for generations. And yet, the rest of their families are on the other side. They are in Indian occupied Kashmir, and they are living a most horrific existence. They have to just purely exist. They're not living. And so today, my message of solidarity from the other end of the world, here in Johannesburg in South Africa, is really with the Kashmiri women who fight for justice. It is for activists such as yourself, Professor Ashraf, as well as those who constantly fight around the world. Miss Margaret Owen, again, an incredible, incredible voice on this issue, and one that I have followed and learned so much from. I know just a little, but every day I aim to learn a little bit more. For those of you on social media, I would encourage you to look for the Kashmiri activists who are online. Share their content. There is so much that we can do in order to break the media blockade that exists put out by India, the propaganda that is put out there. And we can only combat that by sharing important stories and information, sharing first-hand accounts of Kashmiri journalists who are on the ground in the occupied territory, and ensuring that we make our voice heard for the people of Kashmir, not only today, but every single day thereafter. I would really like again to just thank all of the panelists for their time on such an important platform. And again, Professor Ashraf, you really do so much for the Kashmiri people. And I've seen you at work in the body of the United Nations Human Rights Council. And there again, we will meet, inshallah. Jazakallah.
Inshallah. Thank you very much, Catherine, once again. Hearing from your side, and your words are really powerful, and they really give strength to the women of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. We are really looking forward to have you again, and inshallah I'll do that. My next speaker is Miss Gilia Ferreira Delgado. She is human rights activist and she's from Italy, and she represents Egypt at Human Rights Council. And today she is with us for showing solidarity with women of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and on this very important and special occasion of International Women's Day. Miss Gilia, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you deeply for welcoming me here. Thank you to the Kashmir Institute of International Relations and the WMC, because today is a special day, as stated before by my fellow panelists. International Women's Day marks a call to action for accelerating women equality, and it is supposed to raise awareness, prevent violation of women's rights, and condemn the ones who perpetrate them. As said before, the situation of women in Kashmir is a topic that highlights the importance to constantly remind ourselves that even though we live in a modern world and society, there's still a long way to achieve and implement women's fundamental human rights, gender equality, and gender empowerment. Kashmir is one of the most militarized areas of the world, and in fact, it, as underlined by the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights, um, there is still a collection of serious and massive violations of human rights, with the action of armed groups, killing of civilians, political activists, and protesters. The Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir did not establish any investigations into civilian killings. In armed conflicts, the roles of women and men are strictly distinguished. In fact, women are often given fewer formal roles or positions of control and command. Different roles pursued by women in armed conflicts can lead to violations of human rights. They are victims not only of physical, but also of psychological violence, and the situation worsens when it comes to conservative societies. One of the atrocities to which Kashmiri women are constantly exposed to is rape as a war weapon and sexual torture. It has been used in previous armed conflicts around the world, for example, in Yugoslavia and also in Rwanda, but it acquired a criminal relevance not long ago. Today, women's bodies are still instrumentalized and humiliated, and it is our duty as activists and as women to inform and try to stop these atrocities, aiming to punish it. When speaking of gender approach, we find that rape during an armed conflict can cause severe forms of trauma, which can have tragic consequences on the victim's psychological sphere. The death of victims for many different reasons, and it can be used as a tool to control births and often as a tool to physically destroy the birth givers, usually with the purpose of erasing a specific group, and in particularly when speaking of anti-cleansing. In fact, as claimed by the ICTR, rape becomes a genocide act when it is used against specific women, causing devastating sense of suffering towards a specific group. ICTR defines it as a physical invasion of sexual nature committed on a person under circumstances which are coercive. It is committed as a part of a widespread or systematic attack on a civilian population on curtain the catalog discriminatory grounds, namely ethnic, political, racial, or religious ones. The ICTY, in fact, extends its definition to act of sexual penetration without any kind of consent from the victim. It has been recognized as an instrument aiming to terrorize, demoralize the victim, obtain control on peoples and territories, punish and humiliate the victim, but is mostly used as a war weapon for its tremendous consequences, unwanted pregnancies, and control over the reproductive capacities of women. Women's bodies then become the enemy's property, and this can be observed in Kashmir. As a de facto region, Kashmir does not benefit from the qualification of de jure formal sovereign state. Since it is administered by India and Pakistan, it has been in different occasions a scenario of human rights serious violations, and its people are the main characters of inhumane and degrading treatments towards its population. What India is performing in India administered Kashmir is a set of serious violations of the Geneva Convention, including Article 3, and of the laws and customs of war crimes. These kind of terms are a part of human rights serious and massive violations, for example, atrocities, systematic attacks to civilians, war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, and aggression, over which the International Criminal Court has its jurisdiction. Genocide, regulated by Article 6 of the ICC, is a violent act carried out with special intention. Its definition has not formally changed since 1948. We are deeply concerned about the situation and the possible long-term effects these atrocities will have on the lives of Kashmiri women. Therefore, we ask the international community to properly encourage and help Kashmiri people. We are aware that these fundamental human rights cannot be realized without it. I send my heartfelt solidarity to the brave Kashmiri women. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Gilia. Thank you very much for joining us. Very quickly, my next speaker is Marina Zuka. She also has to take leave. So very quickly, I'll give floor to Marina Zuka. She's visiting faculty Italy and she's human rights activist, a really good friend and sister of Kashmiri women. Since long we have been working together. So over to you, Marina.
Thank you so much, Shagufta. As you said, we are a long friend, and I have been working on the issue of Kashmir since a long time, and I am really glad you invited me to join this webinar, which is also meant to be a side event of the UN Human Rights Council. I am also glad for my colleagues and for what they have said. And just because we are asking why we cannot get justice and women in Kashmir cannot get justice, I would like to start from some points that probably my colleagues have already highlighted. First of all, the fact that we are dealing with one of the mostly militarized areas of the world. And we are dealing with women that are seeing their violations in many fields. I would like to say that women are facing Kashmiri women are facing their human rights violated and their freedom restricted. But on the other hand, they are also suffering due to the gender sexual based violence, which is related to the occupation and to the illegal occupation that Indian government and Indian soldiers are imposing to those territories. So for what concerns the situation of human rights, it is important to say that in 1981, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women of the UN has entered into force, and it imposes legal bindings to the member states. India has ratified it and it has become a member state of this convention in 1993. So Indian government has many duties related to this convention, such as the duty to grant social, political, economic, and whatever kind of rights to women. Also the women that are living in the illegal occupied territories of Kashmir. Then on the 23rd of February 2016, this day has been recognized by the Kashmiri Women's Resistance Day due to the huge presence of women in the protests against Indian occupation. Indian government has badly repressed the presence of women in the protests against their government in Kashmir. Those repression turned into sexual violence and other forms of body violence against women in Kashmir that unfortunately have been unreported due to the fear of other punishments. So in this case, we have to be really objective and we have to analyze the situation. This is a violation of international humanitarian law. Given that India is occupying the Kashmiri territories, we are dealing with humanitarian law and the Indian government has to fulfill the Fourth Geneva Convention, which takes into relation and into account the lives of people living under occupation and siege. And I would like to remind that there is an illegal lockdown in Kashmiri territories ongoing since August 2019. Then, given that we have said what can we do, we can keep on speaking up, keep on working beside the UN Human Rights Council. But there are other recommendations, given that this is a side event of the UN, there are other recommendations that I would like to address to the Indian government. First of all, remove the huge presence of Indian soldiers in the Kashmiri territories that are the reason why women are suffering this big rate of sexual violence. First of all, I would like to remind about the UN recommendation issued in the report of June 2018, which is dealing with the Kashmiri occupation. As we know, in a territory where warfare is ongoing, it is possible, unfortunately, that rapes and body violations against women may have high ranks. Then I would wish that the international community may take all the possible steps in relation to the responsibility to protect, and the UN may establish a commission for inquiry for the crimes committed mostly against women in Kashmir. And also, it would be great if it has been previously done in the case of Yugoslavia and Rwanda. It would be great if the UN could establish an international criminal tribunal for the crimes committed in the territories of Kashmir. And I would like to underline that those are possible and concrete steps that we can take in order to grant to the women in Kashmir to see their rights granted. And lastly, but not least, yes, I also would like to underline that body violations in times of war are part of crimes against humanity and genocide. So that's why I strongly would like to ask to the UN to establish an international criminal tribunal. And furthermore, the Indian occupation would let humanitarian staff into the territories, into the Kashmiri occupied territories, in order to give a direct and concrete sustain to women and to children, not only for their psychological but also for their physical damage. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Marina, for your insights on this Jammu and Kashmir dispute. My next speaker is very dear Shani Hamid. She's ambassador for strategic affairs, human rights, and she's also a senior political advisor, a really good friend of Kashmiri women. And she speaks very high for and very strongly for women of Indian occupied Kashmir, because Indian army can rape them, can kill them, can maim them, can blind them, and they are peace brigade. And when we mourn, we disrupt peace. So on this area, Shani Hamid will give her intake, and please, I'm pleased to give floor to Shani Hamid for her intervention.
Thank you very much. Thank you, dear Professor Shagufta. Thank you, dear ladies, for having me today. Every day is a Women's Day for us, isn't it? Thank you very much indeed. Well, today, I would like to praise all girls, women, and all genders standing together to support the value of equality. And today, within this union of honoring all women, I would like to also offer my heartfelt prayers to the women facing abuse in war zones, alike our sisters in Indian occupied Kashmir, who are facing human rights abuses every day. Of course, we are well aware that what the Indian administration is doing in the occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and they are being fulfilled with deliberate actions of war crimes, genocide, shortly many unfair applications, which clearly pointing against United Nations human rights principles. And of course, India's Modi administration is well calculating their cunning tactics towards eliminating their victims' core moral values by suppressing the women in occupied Kashmir. Eventually, we all know that the force of sinister rape abuse, and violence is a war crime in the occupied regions, which includes an intention to destroy the futures of the generations in the applied area. So, in this exceptional day of union, I urge the United Nations Security Council to take a bold step towards enabling peace for Indian occupied Kashmir. Because abuse against women is a wicked poison which its spread can destroy the entire wellness of society. Therefore, unfortunately today, not in the conflict zones only, but in all around the world, the ongoing violations against girls and women is actually one of the most widespread violation of human rights. In fact, such forms of abuse can have many variations, such as domestic violence, sexual violence, early and forced marriages, genital mutilation, honor crimes, sex trafficking, slavery, neglect, physical abuse, psychological abuse, elder abuse, emotional, verbal, spiritual, financial, and material, organizational, institutional, discriminationary, abuse, rage, and more. So women can face all this sort of abuse everywhere around the world. And this is happening more and more intensively in Kashmir. Plus, was disabled women more likely to face such mistreatments? The studies indicate that more than 70% of women experience brutality and abuse around the world anyway. Adding to this, the challenges that arrived with COVID-19 pandemic brings to our attentions that it is time to readapt our applications and it is time to update our policies. I'm telling you this as a government advisor, as a presidential advisor, as a ministerial advisor who is active in international level. So we have to enhance our policies while we are rebuilding our lives. Because if you don't enhance our efforts, and if we don't pursue the solutions correctly, this alarming negativity which lurking within the society will eventually diminish the health pillars of sustainability. We will not have our aimed sustainability, which we were aiming for 2030. Surely, we are well appreciative that many discrimination prevention principles, taking their articles in many UN member countries with enriched law sections and treaties, somehow this is happening in within many UN member countries, but except India or doesn't apply to Indian occupied Kashmir. That's a question to ask, why? Then having said so, the country's international differences such as geographic, cultural, traditional, social, historical, economical, and most importantly, educational differences clearly point to a necessity towards achieving better coherence for equality. Ultimately, with reminder about universal human rights principles, will be fair and just about time to ask all governments for more productive measures, especially now, while we are rebuilding our lives after COVID-19 pandemic. So let's invest more on education, which will entitle everybody for equality. Within the same context, For a coherent society, governments also need to collaborate more often with NGOs, with media, with private sectors, in national and international levels as well. Governments, you have to speed up. You have to update your game in international level. And ladies around the world, remember, every day is the Women's Day for us. So if you truly want to progress for the purpose of empowerment and for equality, I invite you to unite more and to unite better. I invite you to leave our differences aside, to collaborate better, to focus on our very own educational and enlightenment goals. This will also help us towards protecting the well-being of our children. After all, we are the best friends. We are the sisters. We are the daughters. We are aunties. We are the partners of someone. But the most importantly, we are the mothers of all the future generations. Never forget that. What a unique key we are to open the door of a stronger society. Just embrace that, ladies, embrace it. So we don't need to be empowered by someone or something. We already got the power. Plays within. Also, let's unite for our sisters in war zones. And let's unite for our sisters in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, because they have nobody but us. Let's unite for them. It's us, we can help them. How strong we are. Just remember, we can make a difference. We do make a difference. We are unique. We are free. We are here. And time is now, ladies. Let's just make it happen. All my blessings. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Shani, for your wonderful presentation, like always. Thank you very much for joining us today, and it's really a pleasure to have you. My next speaker is Barrister Nida Salam. She's British Kashmiri barrister. Barrister Nida, I just want to know that in 2000, the Security Council adopted Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security, calling for the increased participation of women and the incorporation of gender perspective in all UN peace and security efforts. Since then, UN Security Council has adopted a number of resolutions on women's security and peace. In 2008, it adopted landmark resolution 1820, 2008, the first devoted to addressing sexual violence in conflict situations. Subsequent resolution 1888, 2009, 1889, 2009, 1960, 2010, particularly focusing on preventing and responding to the conflict-related sexual violence. As we have all these resolutions for the protection of women and girls, so what do you see that what are the hurdles in the implementation of these all resolutions when it comes to the women of Indian occupied Kashmir? Why, I mean, the advocates of human rights and the protectors and promoters and champions of human rights, why they don't take care of all these resolutions, and why they are not unite at the different forums of United Nations, either that is the Security Council, either that is the United Nations Human Rights Council, or other subunits and subparts? How do you see it? What are the reasons behind that when it comes to the women of Indian occupied Kashmir? Over to you, Barrister Nida. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I would like to say thank you, Dr. Shagufta, for this invitation. It is my privilege to be here today. Happy International Women's Day to everyone. Dr. Shagufta, I'm going to answer your question. I'm just going to start from the beginning. Women are the most pivotal component of our society, but unfortunately, they still have hindrances in getting their rights. Women should be empowered with their rights of education, health, security, decision-making authority, better living standard, and very importantly, respect. As you know that women have brains and are capable of doing the same work done by men, huddled to women empowerment is actually in the minds of the people from all perspectives. So the Kashmiri conflict has been characterized by large-scale usage of sexual violence by multiple belligerents since its inception. Kashmir is being immensely subjugated, and women are the biggest victim of this inhuman siege. The most important responsibility of any state is to provide basic rights and security of its people, regardless of its caste, creed, faith, geographical identity of the person or community. However, so far, India and its fascist governments, present and in the past, failed in doing so. Besides from that, freedom is the birthright of every individual. As Colry, he's entitled to enjoy political rights and civil liberties in his own state. No other state has a right to limit or control his freedom. In occupied Kashmir, human rights abuses are common occurrences of daily life. The root cause of women rights violations and rest of the human rights violations is the Indian illegal occupation that is multidimensional, encompassing military, political, and cultural aggression with no access to human rights for the victims. According to the Human Rights Watch, rapes by militants has increased over the years. There is a code of silence and fear that prevent people from reporting investigation of cases of rapes by militants from all perspectives. Because the basic reason is that it's difficult because many Kashmiris are reluctant to even discuss it for the fear of violent reprisals. According to the scholar Anger Shekhbaz, rape is an essential element of the Indian military strategy in Kashmir at the moment. A United Nations Commission on Human Rights, Professor William Baker gave a testimony that rape in Kashmir was not merely a case of isolated incident involving undisciplined soldiers. Rather, the security forces were actively deploying rape on the Kashmiri populace as a method of humiliation and frightening them. Another Human Rights Watch stated that military codes in India are incompetent to deal with the cases of serious human rights abuses and more responsible in covering up evidences and protecting the involved officers. According to Human Rights Watch, Armed Forces Special Power Act allow any soldier or officer to fire anyone without a warrant, conduct home invasions. Women were the main victims, and this act shield the brutal Indian forces from prosecution from their crimes. This draconian nature of the act is the breach of international law. India should be prosecuted in international court for its violations. The International Human Rights Law, United Nations Security Council resolution are being violated, and India is responsible so far because Indian forces are quite not even aggressive and assertive. They are quite dominating in occupied Kashmir. Indian forces use harassment and molestation against women as a weapon of war, not to suppress Kashmiri liberation. As a weapon of war to suppress Kashmiri liberation struggle, but to declare activists and leaders from their campaigners using fear that women and they love would be subjected to sexual abuse. How the world will forget the 9-year-old Asif Banu, who was abducted and gang raped by Indian police personnel, and fanatic affiliation with extremist Hindu organization in Katwa region or area of Jammu and Kashmir in January 2019. Physicians from Asia Watch and Human Rights clearly stated in their reports Indian armed forces are in severe violations of international human rights and humanitarian laws. India is a breach of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. Article 1 refers to the discrimination against women. Article 5, duties on state parties. India is in a breach for that. Voting rights, public participation. India is in a breach for that. Article 11, right of employment. Again, look at the lockdown in India after the abrogation of articles. So again, India is in a breach for that. Article 12 grants equal access to health care. Again, India is in a breach for that. Article 13, prohibition on discrimination. Again, India, prohibition on discrimination on economic and social life. Again, unfortunately, India is in a breach for that. The prohibition of torture and ill treatment under international law, and India is in a breach of it under international humanitarian law, the Geneva Convention, the 1977 protocols, the Hague Convention. India should be prosecuted in International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity and genocide. Now, at last, I would like to answer your question directly with the combination of all the discussion that why these platforms like Geneva Convention, Hague Convention, United Nations Resolution failed to impose or failed to stop the infringement of human rights because of the because of the domination of India. And I strongly believe that look at the years, like it's been long that these violations are occurring in occupied Kashmir. And now the only solution, I strongly believe that India should be prosecuted in international court for ill treatment, for torture, for violations of human rights, because this behavior is not acceptable. And this example is quite unique across the globe. Whatever India is doing, the current fascist, racist government of India is responsible for all the infringement of human rights.
Very rightly said, Barrister. India is the violator of all humanitarian international laws, and blatantly India is presenting itself that yes, I'm doing so, and the superpowers, because of their economic and other interest and vested interest and business deal, they are reluctant to put India on this area. So very rightly said. My next speaker is Ms. Rehanna Ali. She's Information Secretary, TEK UK, and she is a host for Live with Rehanna. She's a lecturer and a writer in UK. It's really an honor for me to have you, Rehanna, and I'm pleased to give you the floor for your intervention on this particular International Women's Day with special reference to the women of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Over to you, please. Rehanna, please unmute yourself.
Yeah. I would like to say Assalamu alaikum, and I would like to say hello to my friend ladies here. First thing I would like to say is Happy International Women's Day, because today is a very special day for us women to actually think about ourselves, how capable we are and how inspiring we are for ourselves and the women around us and the world. I would like to go into the topic. One second. So today I'm actually honored to be invited by Shagufta Ashraf, and it's many thanks to you. I would like to say it's so sad, even after 73 years, Kashmiri women are struggling under conflict and crying for justice. In conflicts, females of all ages suffer and become the victims of rape as a weapon. Women suffer mental, physical, sexual abuse, which not only affects their mental health, but it affects the whole family. Being a mother, it affects their children, affects their husband and the family member they're actually living with, because women are nurtures and maintain family unit more effectively than men do. In simple, the world is more beautiful and colorful because of women because of women, and Kashmiri women are very, very special women because they have been suffering from a long time, like the women of Palestine. These two women are very special because they've gone through enough. They have been gone through so many trials that not we can imagine or maybe we can go through. I would like to also add on that I would like to tribute Asia Tarabi and the other political leaders who are at the moment in Tahar jail, which is one of the notorious prisons at the moment, and in the condition of COVID-19. As we all know, the Asia Tarabi is in her 60s. She is not in good health to actually be at a dangerous jail like the Har jail. And I would like to appeal the ladies here and the people who are watching and the United Nations that we should arrange for her to be released. First of all, I would like to remind everybody that the Kashmiris are not entitled to, they don't come under the Constitution of India because it's a disputed area. So many of us make a mistake by thinking that the laws which are applied there, they need to be abide. No, those laws are not for us. And they have many laws which are actually inhuman. They are illegal. There are a couple of laws I'm going to be going into, but before I go into the laws, I would like to say United Nations has 5 elements of terrorism according to 2006. First is there should be audience. Number 2, plan of fear and harming tools. Number 3, there should be innocent people. And number 5, there should be political gain. And number 3, and number 5, there has to be like elements that this has been well planned and it has been going on from a long time. Till these elements are not there, you can't trial anybody for anti-terrorism law. So the Kashmiri women at the moment, if you look at them, they are harmless, they are innocent, they don't come under this law, which is the international, like the United Nations has actually put forward. The other laws which I do think are in Kashmir at the moment, which are the reasons why women are suffering, and it's been 31 years, and I'm very shocked to actually say this to you ladies, and I know that from before me, Margaret Owen has actually touched upon it with some other ladies, that the biggest law they have over there, which is why women have been raped, is Armed Forces Special Forces Act 1990. Now, this law is actually one of the bad laws, black laws, or you can say illegal laws. And I'm shocked the United Nations hasn't done anything about it. The Human Rights Organization, the Women Organization, and the world has not touched upon it. Under this law, the Indian Army get impunity under Section 7. With this impunity, they have the right to search you in your house, on the road, they can arrest you. Now, to arrest you and detain you, they have a law which is called Public Safety Act, which is 1992. So under this law, they can actually detain you for 2 years, and before the 2 years period is started, they can start it all over again. Now, while you are in detention, you are not trialed, you're not allowed to have a lawyer, you're not allowed to see your family. So there are many Kashmiri and even women, and it's so like inhuman that they have been detaining boys from the age of 9. So once somebody is detained, nobody knows what's happening with them. And if they like, they can return. And if they don't like, this can carry on for years without being on a trial. So many women are half widows, as we have heard earlier, because of this law as well. Now, going back to the law which I was talking to you before, which is called Afsafa Law 1990. This law came into place in 1990. Although this law was introduced in 7 sisters, which are East Western states, which are part of India at the moment, in 1958. And the reason was that these states has nothing to do with India, but India wanted to take over them illegally the way it has taken over Kashmir. So it applied the law over there in 1958, and in 1972 was the time that after all those years, they made sure that these 7 sisters were part of India. After that, they actually experimented this law in Punjab. As we know, in 1984, in Punjab, there was a Sikh and Hindu violence in India. So they applied it over there for 13 years. But then they decided to apply it in Jammu and Kashmir. And when they applied it in Jammu and Kashmir, they actually made it more harder for the people over there. Now, under this law, 4 to 5 people can't stand and talk. Anybody says something about their constitution, anybody says something about their flag or about the ethos, even on suspicion, that person can be tortured, arrested, killed, or raped. And many women, as we all remember, in 1991, 23rd of February, many women were raped in the twin villages of Cornel Pushpura. And one unit, which was called Bhutana the Rifle Unit, which came over there with the men. I think they had 150 men over there who came and raped females between the age of 13 to 80. And what I do know is that some ladies even passed away because it was snowing outside, and the men were actually molested, and the men were taken out of the houses while the women were molested in the cold. So that night is a night that nobody can forget if we go and read, and there's a book about it as well. So the reason why I'm saying is that that law was exercised there on like as number one, and then after that, this law has been applied in many places. Now, under this law, anybody can break into your house. They don't need a warrant. There's no judge. There's no trial. There is nobody to answer. They're able to. They break into a house. They can go through anything they like. They can do anything to you. I have heard from friends who are in occupied Kashmir at the moment that a few months ago, they started something new. They started going into the houses and they started cutting women's hair. Just to let them know that today we have come here to cut your hair. Next time we will come, we will molest them and we'll rape you. So anybody, even if one child makes a mistake, like says something against the army or throws stones on them or abuses them, they made sure to come to the whole village or to that area, and they went into each houses and they break in windows and abusing them and scaring them. So they don't have the they threaten them in a certain way that they would not want to talk about it. Mental torture. This is the mental torture, and many people are going through a lot of mental health issues, like psychologically, especially women who have been raped, who have been touched, who have been actually suffering, who have seen their mother suffering, who know the stories of what happened to their mothers or grandmothers 31 years ago. They are all going through a mental issue. So mental health is a big problem for men and women, especially men, seeing the women. And many times the Indian army can come and rape you in front of your children, your family members, which is actually very hard for the whole family. So I would like to give you this section. So basically, many people have been complaining that the houses have been burnt and the houses have been destroyed. So this is part of this law as well. They can burn your house, and on suspicion that you are actually allowing militants to come into your house, or you are actually trying to save them. So even if they have suspicion on you about anything, they can use this against you, which is something very abnormal, like I've never heard in the whole world. Because myself being a law graduate, like I do know law, I've never heard any law like this in the world, which has been applied over there. And I know that we all are talking about the ladies suffering in IOK, but at the same time, the biggest reason are these laws. I would actually say to all of my sisters here today, all of the ladies here today, that we need to make sure that the world knows about these laws, and these laws to be abolished. These laws are illegal laws. And the other thing which is surprising, that this law was passed by the Indian Assembly and is under Article 248 of Indian Constitution when the Assembly passed it. Now, which kind of a Assembly of Parliament would actually pass this kind of law? And the reason is to break Kashmiris down, that they get so scared. And being a Muslim, for us, covering ourselves is a big factor for every woman. So when a woman is raped in front of her family and so many times and gang raped, it really tears that woman apart. And more than that, the men of the family, they actually feel living dead. So they are applying these things only to make sure that our Kashmiri ladies don't actually have any self-respect left, or they feel living dead. So nobody can apply, or nobody can apply or ask for freedom. I would say that as Safa law failed the international conversion and treaties India has signed, especially violates human rights. So India has actually signed many resolutions and treaties, and under that, it did say that it's going to make sure that everybody under India or even the disputed state of Kashmir be handled well, which India is actually violating. And the basic thing India is violating is human rights laws. So I would like to thank everybody to listening to me, and I would like to go back to Shagufta Ashraf. Thank you for today.
Thank you very much, Advocate Rehana. It was really a thematic intervention. You know, you were discussing different laws and, black laws being implemented in the region. So thank you very much for your comprehensive talk on the subject. My next speaker is Dr. Saira Shah. She's coordinator at Mirpur University of Science and Technology. She's living in Azad Kashmir, but basically she is from Indian occupied Kashmir. So today we have only one speaker from Indian occupied Kashmir because ladies and even men are not allowed to come on social media. We had a friend in our last webinars, a daughter of a political prisoner, but in recent, I mean, due to the lockdown and everything, restrictions and surveillance point of view, she's not able to join us today. And she's receiving threats and all that from the Indian agencies that if you would come on social media, what would happen with you. So we have only today Dr. Saira Shah, and she's from Indian occupied Kashmir. She will share the real miseries and insights as far as women of Indian occupied Kashmir are suffering from. Dr. Saira, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shagufta Ashraf, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this occasion. I would like to thank Kashmir Institute of International Relations and World Muslim Congress for inviting me to the webinar. I would also like to congratulate all the participants who are attending and giving valuable input in this webinar for making a difference and breaking the barriers in their respective fields and becoming the voice for the marginalized women across the globe. As we all know that we are celebrating Women's Day today, and the theme for the International Women's Day this year is choose to challenge. So we can choose to challenge and call out all gender bias and inequality, because a society without an empowered women becomes dysfunctional. Therefore, we need to challenge. When we will challenge, only the change will come. However, in Kashmir, the Kashmiri women have adopted this theme and have chosen to challenge the unjustified occupation of India in Kashmir. The women here are challenging as for them in the most heavily militarized region. It's the battleground in the streets as well as at their homes. In Kashmir, the women are at the intersection of different identities, and each of these brings new challenges to the women every day. All the women in Kashmir navigate through these challenges thrown at them by the conflict in innumerable ways. Similarly, the class and caste positions also put hurdles in their ways to live a fulfilled life. Majority of the women in Kashmir are Muslims, as we know, and this is in itself a challenge in the times of global Islamophobia. In the Kashmiri society, women face many stigmas and challenges. They are both private as well as political. Despite all these odds, I will say Kashmiri women exemplify grit and grace. The women in Kashmir are both the victims and the survivors. They are the widows who have lost their husbands, and they are mothers who have lost their sons. The women who are pregnant and are able to reach the crucial healthcare services during the lockdowns. Uh, Despite all odds, the Kashmiri women are increasingly vocal about their rights and ambitions. And that has been reflected in the growing numbers of women and girls who take part in the street protests. We all know that since 1990, we have seen a massive surge in sexual violence used as a weapon of war. And to our dismay, no Indian authorities have been prosecuted, and not a single offender has been prosecuted, and nobody has even condemned these shameful acts. The deepest sorrow is that nobody is prepared to raise this issue. In Kashmir, we have seen more than 20 to 25,000 women have been widowed, and many daughters of Kashmir are living as half widows, as this has been highlighted by Margaret as well, and the others speakers and colleagues of mine have also raised this issue. These are the women who do not have the clues of their husbands. Either they are dead or they are illegally detained by the Indian forces. So we do not know about the whereabouts of them. We can imagine the scale by the fact that only in Baramulla, approximately more than 2,000 women are searching for their missing husbands. We are talking about one district. So this very fact is hard to digest, that why the women rights activists, human rights heroes, and international organizations, as well as the international community, have a criminal silence on this issue. So we ask the question as Kashmiri, who will raise these voices on the international forum? And at this point, I thank you, the women speaking on this webinar from around the world and raising their concern and raising their voice for the Kashmiri women. We also see the psychological impact of these rapes and torture, and it's a deep concern with killings, torture, rapes, molestation, disappearances, and detentions. It's the order of the day in Kashmir, and the psychiatric disorders have increased immensely. The post-traumatic stress disorder, one of the major psychiatric disease, has witnessed a major upsurge. Along with that, major depressive disorder follow this. There are other mental disorders like bipolar disorder, panic, phobia, general anxiety, sleep disorders that have also shown fourfold increase. And to be very honest, women bear the brunt of these tragedies every day. They have to support the family after the death of their husbands, fathers, sons, or the brothers. The phenomena which has been highlighted by Margaret in great detail about the Kashmiri half widows. These are the women whose husbands have been disappeared by the Indian security forces. And when a woman is unaware of their whereabouts of their husbands, they have not only to endure the grief comes from the separation from their spouses, they are also in constant struggle to survive. They do not know either they are dead or they are still alive, and they have to make the boats and meat, and they have to provide for their children. Since their husbands have not been proclaimed dead officially, they face challenges in inheritance as well. Also suffer trauma, constant fear of being mistreated by the Indian forces. Because they hunt, they torture, they rape the women at their will. Social stigma which is attached to these women add to their miseries, but nothing more heart-wrenching than the silence on their lips when every night their children ask the mothers, "Mom, when is the dad coming back?" There is no answer to it, and women in Kashmir are suffering from this. The horrors of the women who suffer in the absence of their husbands are left unnoticed. Untold and unheard stories of Kashmiri half widows, the brave women carrying on despite all odds, exposes us to the indispensable role of women and their thankless contribution towards realizing a better future for the generations to come. These women are among the torch bearers of Kashmir freedom struggle. Their resilience is unmatched and struggle unrivaled. International humanitarian laws, as in Barrister Nida, Margaret, and others have highlighted, it prohibits the attacks on civilian populations. And it has been said the human rights violation, they systematically ignore the civilian rights, and the situation in the armed conflict for the women, it's especially deplorable, and it's especially very haunting. The many articles have been quoted by our by senior colleagues here. The Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilian persons in the time of war, additional protocol of it of 1977. Then we have the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action adopted by the World Conference on Human Rights. Beijing Declaration about the women in conflict also calls to integrate a gender perspective in the resolution of armed or other conflicts and foreign occupation, and aim for the gender balance when nominating or promoting candidates for judicial and other positions, which was Professor Chugufta also referring to. nothing has been applied in Kashmir. The women in Kashmir are in misery. The women in Kashmir fighting against all odds is still standing and will stand and has chosen to challenge. So the theme of this International Day has already been adopted by the women in Kashmir, and the women of Kashmir, our colleagues, everybody is very much determined to fight against all odds. And I would again like to thank all the women sitting here from around the world who have shown their solidarity with the Kashmiri women, with the cause of the Kashmir and the justified cause of Kashmir. And I hope that this cause will, and the voices of unheard, voices of marginalized will be heard on every forum, and we will try to make a difference, and we will continue to add up to this, and we will continue our fight against, and we wish for the day when the Kashmiri women from across the world and Kashmiri women from Srinagar, from Baramulla, from every part of the Kashmir will be with us, and will be talking about how much freedom and how much justice they are enjoying now. Thank you very much, and it was a great honor for me to be here on this day. Thank you very much, Gupta.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saira Shah, for your wonderful presentation. My last speaker, distinguished speaker, my friend, Dr. Rida Murad is with us. She is member of the Arab Human Rights Committee, and she's in charge of the Kamil Murad Foundation project for assisting Syrian refugees and North Lebanon's civil society. Dr. Rida Murad, you have the floor, please. Dr. Rida, can you hear me? Dr. Rida, are you with us?
Hello? Yeah, no.
Yeah, you have the floor, Dr. Rida.
Yes, assalamu alaikum. Yeah, peace and open you all ladies. Thank you, our doctor, my dear Shagufta Sharif, for our participation in the International Women's Day, especially for Kashmir region, and for removing justice from it. So I offer the woman in general and Kashmiri woman the highest expression of appreciation and respect, and that will be healthy and safe from the COVID-19 for all ladies in the world. First of all, about the region of Kashmir, the Jammu region between India and Pakistan. In addition to the demographic change, India did not work on the lack of demographic change, especially since the Muslim majority in Kashmir is turning into a minority. Every intellectual in the world know the problem, and that every Kashmiri citizen say we are not ready to live in the India system, especially after the withdrawal of the welfare and the two decisions to end autonomy and annex Jammu region to the Indian state and not develop and oppress women, especially in their privacy and dignity. You want all of their rights. You know, the region of Kashmir is a beautiful country. Since I was young, I have heard about it, beautiful and very beauty people. And I have linked the situation as happening in like Palestine, especially since the international community does not listen and does not meet only once for this faithful cause. Yet I pray to God to restore the truth to companion no matter how long it takes. Thank you for all ladies. Thank you, Dr. Shagufta. Thank you for all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reda, for your wonderful presentation. This is what end of today's webinar, but before leaving, I would like to invite Chairman Kashmir Institute of International Relations. He's with us, Mr. Altaf Hussain Wani, and I really want to thank him for organizing this webinar, particularly on International Women's Day. So we really want to hear a few words as a conclusion of this webinar. So if you want to share, Mr. Wani, please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gupta, and thank you, all of you ladies, for joining this webinar and putting forward your wonderful views on the different subjects regarding the women and especially the women in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. It has been a great learning always when I listen to Margaret Owens, her experience in the field of women rights and the way she champions the rights of Kashmiri women. It gives us more and more courage in the distress to struggle more for these rights. And likewise, Julie Ward and other young ladies who are the part of this panel. Shani Ahmed has been a good friend of mine, and she has been very active on all the fronts. And Rihanna has been organizing lots of webinars in the UK on the Kashmiri's rights, and she's also coordinating those webinars. Thank you, Rihanna, so much. And Nida, Barrister Nida Salam, who's a new addition to our this young ladies from Kashmir, to this team who is championing the rights of Kashmir. Dr. Saira Shah, always nice to listen to you, your thoughtful presentations. Overall, it was a learning for me also, and in order we tried to galvanize the international support for the people of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the women of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir who have faced the brunt of the conflict for the last 32 years. You have already elaborated their miseries, the kind of miseries they are facing, and the kind of suppression is going on in occupied Kashmir, and the legal recourse which they don't have. You have already deliberated that the laws, draconian laws which India has enacted there. With all this, I thank you all, and inshallah we will meet again in another webinar. Thank you, Shagufta Aisha, for coordinating this webinar, for moderating this so nicely. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wani. And with this one, I really want to thank you on behalf of Kashmir Institute of International Relations, and of course, on behalf of my team, who is working tirelessly for these webinars, because these webinars are in parallel with the 46th session of Human Rights Council. So to you all, and with this, I want to take your leave, and I really look forward to have you again, either on webinar or physically. Whenever we'll get chance, we'll get together, inshallah. And with this hope that one day the women of Indian occupied Kashmir, and of course the population of Indian occupied Kashmir, will exercise and enjoy their freedom, and we will celebrate International Women's Day with its real essence. With this, I'm really grateful to you once again, and wish you a very, very happy evening, and bye-bye. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr.